Welcome everybody to Mid-Rock Crisis. Today we're going to talk about Muddy Waters. Also known as McKinley Morganfield, he was born in 1913, died in 1983, an American blues singer, songwriter, musician, and the father of modern Chicago blues. He grew up in Clarksdale, Mississippi. By 17, he was playing guitar and harmonica, emulating local blues artists Son House and Robert Johnson. In 1941, Waters was recorded by Alan Lomax for the Library of Congress. In 1943, he moved to Chicago to advance his music career. He recorded for Columbia and then Aristocrat Records, a new label owned and run by Leonard and Phil Chess. The band members were Little Walter Jacobs on harmonica, Jimmy Rogers on guitar, Elgin Evans on drums, Otis Spann on piano, and Muddy Waters on vocals and guitar. Some recordings also featured Willie Dixon on bass. In 1958, Waters traveled to England, escalating a blues revival there. He would influence rock and roll as well on both sides of the Atlantic. His birthplace and birth date are not certain. It was probably between 1913 and 1950. In either Sharkey or Issaquena County. He was raised by his grandmother. His mother had died soon after his birth. His grandma, Della, gave him his nickname because he often played in the muddy water of Deer Creek near their home. And church introduced music. At 17, he sold a horse to acquire money for a guitar, which cost $2.50. Hope he had some change. The Sears Roebuck catalog. That's where people got their guitars back then. And you're not going to go into the center of town and go into Sam Ash and choose among 1,000 guitars hanging up along the wall. That comes later. Muddy Waters started playing his songs in juke joints near his hometown. He remembers his move to Chicago as the single most pivotal moment of his life. He worked at a factory during the day and played at night. He would open shows for Big Bill Broonzy, one of the leading Chicago bluesmen. In 1944, Muddy brought his first electric guitar. He had only played acoustic guitar in the Delta. In Chicago, the clubs were larger, louder, and rowdier. Playing through an amplifier was a necessity. His first hits were not his first songs. There were 3 years of being bumped around the bars in South Chicago, playing for or with anyone who'd have him. In 1948, he recorded I Can't Be Satisfied at Chess. His popularity blossomed with the circulation of the single. A full year later, his signature song Rollin' Stone was also a hit, and Hoochie Coochie Man, I Just Want to Make Love to You, and I'm Ready continued the parade of hits for Muddy Waters. And then in 1952, Little Walter left Muddy's band when Walter's Juke was a hit. Howlin' Wolf moved to Chicago in 1954. The legendary rivalry began. Jimmy Rogers also left to focus on his own band. Got My Mojo Workin' didn't chart at first, but it went on to become one of his best known songs. The singles sold less, but the singles really stopped in 58. Times were a-changin'. Muddy Waters was the first electric bluesman to play in England. Blues fans were used to acoustic blues. Muddy's electric slide guitar caused quite a stir. Purists they were alarmed, but younger musicians like Alexis Corner and Cyril Davies were inspired to go electric. Their bands had members who would go on to form the Rolling Stones, the Yardbirds, Cream, and Fleetwood Mac. In the 60s, Waters and his electric band played at the Newport Jazz Festival. The recording of this show was released as a live album and was nominated for a Grammy in 1963. Chess attempted to reach folk music audiences. Muddy recorded Folk Singer with an acoustic band. It was not successful, but critics loved it. Muddy would now switch back and forth depending on venues. And in 1967, Muddy recorded blues standards with Bo Diddley, Little Walter, and Howlin' Wolf. The album was marketed as the Super Blues Band in an attempt to reach rock and roll audiences. It didn't fly. There were too many styles at once. In '68, Muddy Waters released Electric Mud in an attempt to revive his career. His backing band was a psychedelic soul band manufactured by Chess called Rotary Connection. The album charted but was dissed by the critics. And in '69, Waters released Father and Sons, featuring a return to his classic blues sound, with an all-star backing band with Michael Bloomfield and Paul Butterfield, and it was a hit. It reached to number 70 in the U.S. And then in 1971, we see a revival and tours. In '72, Waters flew to England to record the London Muddy Waters sessions. A little dyslexia there, folks. A follow-up of the previous year's the London Howlin' Wolf sessions. The idea was to pair the old school with the new, and Waters and Wolf would play with the English and Irish musicians that they'd inspired. Muddy didn't like the results. The playing was not subtle. Went to rock and roll. The album was still a success. He stated, "My blues look so simple, so easy to do, but it's not. They say my blues is the hardest blues in the world to play." From 1977 to 1981, blues musician Johnny Winter produced 4 Muddy Waters albums, all on Blue Sky. Muddy loved Johnny like a son, and they stayed close. He would play gigs with Mick and Keith and Ron. His last public performance was with Eric Clapton in Florida in 1982. Heart failure took Muddy in 1983. He was 70 years old. Now, lawsuits concerning Waters' royalties are still in the courts today. A list of performers who have covered Muddy Waters: Canned Heat, Dylan, Led Zeppelin, the Allman Brothers, Canned Heat, Bob, I already said that, Humble Pie, Steppenwolf, Supertramp, Brian May, Jeff Beck, Angus Young, ZZ Top, B.B. King, John Hammond, and many more. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted Muddy Waters in 1987. There's a quick list of his albums. In 60, Muddy Waters sings Big Bill, probably about Big Bill Broonzy. 64, Folk Singer. 66, Muddy Brass and the Blues. And 68, Electric Mud. And 69, After the Rain. 69, Fathers and Sons. And 72, the London Muddy Waters Sessions. And 73, Can't Get No Grindin'. 74, Unk in Funk. 75, the Muddy Waters Woodstock album. 77, Hard Again. 78, I'm Ready. And in 1981, King Bee. And 11 live albums and 25 compilations. Just going to go back for a moment to 64 in this album, Folk Singer. These were acoustic songs that he had played many years in the Delta before his move to Chicago. And if you like blues, you've already heard this album, but if you are just finding out about Muddy Waters, I recommend listening to Folk Singer if you want to find out what the Delta was about. Thanks, everyone. This is Mid-Rock Crisis. I'm glad there's such people as Keb Mo keeping it going. Bye all.